This story starts at an ending. The arrival of 4 Catholic nuns marks a milestone for the Roman Catholic Diocese of Saskatoon. Sisters Claire, Janine, Louise, and Marie-Noël have returned home. For the first time in 50 years, there are no missionaries from the diocese in the country of Brazil. Half a century of walking side by side with the people of that far-off country has come to an end. This is the story of how 2 peoples from 2 very distant and different lands have become one by a bond that cannot be broken.
The story begins at the Second Vatican Council, and Francis Klein used to tell the story of the Bishop of Brazil, Maceió Diocese, would follow him all over the place and insist that he take seriously John the 23rd's suggestion that the North America and Europe should be helping South America and Central America.
See, they had this coffee shop in the back of the main body of the Church of St. Peter's, and they had great conversations there that became legendary. Okay, so I think that's what it there. The Archbishop of Maceió said to Bishop Francis, "Come on, give us some guys."
They talk so much about mission, need of mission, and especially need to establish the relationships between the churches with the church in undeveloped countries like Brazil.
So Bishop Klein came back to Saskatoon and asked the priests and the people of Saskatoon whether this was feasible and whether we agreed with it.
That was in 1964, and Bishop Klein made the decision to send 3 of his best.
Father Bob Ogle, Father Don McGilvery, and Father Bernard Dunn, and 2 nurses, Cecile Poliev and Ida Reish.
A chegada dos canadenses aqui, eu me recordo muito bem. Eu estava até numa repartição lá na prefeitura com as amigas, quando eu avistei os canadenses, Padre Donaldo, Padre Roberto e Padre Bernardo. E aí começou a missão deles aqui.
And Abbot Jerome was at the Second Vatican Council in the 60s, early 60s, and heard the plea from the Pope. And so Saskatoon had started their mission a couple of years before. And anyway, so Abbot Jerome and the Sisters of Superiors of the Ursulines and of the Elizabethans, they decided, well, we should sponsor something and do our bit to help out as well. And then they picked out a diocese to go to, same as Saskatoon was at. And then they asked for volunteers. And Father Sylvester and Father Elvin Herget, so they were the first 2 that were sent there. And then the sisters joined them a year or 2 later. That's how it all started back in 1967.
Well, the mission was ours, the church's mission, a diocesan mission and a mission of the abbacy. It was never simply an idea of a group of people serving here who said they'd like to serve in Brazil. It's always been the community's project.
Some of the things that we're maybe forgetting now is that it was actually a military dictatorship at that time. And so it's kind of even dangerous living, I think, about the first 10 years or so.
Would you believe that Father Alvin Hergot sniffed out that one of the priests in the diocese was in the confessional spying on the priest giving the homily?
As a church tried to work with the poor people and conscientize them and help them out, there was always a bit of looking over the shoulder to see what the military government response was like.
We had sisters in Papua New Guinea. They had come back, and the community was trying to decide where in the world, as a third world country, we could commit ourselves, engage ourselves. And Father Donaldo, Father Don, mentioned, whenever he would come to Canada, he would say, when are you sisters coming to Brazil? And somehow that seemed to be fitting. The time was right, that we were looking, and I did feel a deep call to go.
I remember we had, every one of us had some kind of a questionnaire to see if we felt called to maybe go to a foreign mission, and at that time there were a few who had indicated the possibility. But as it turned out, Janine was the one who was ready to come. Janine came first, and I came 3 years later.
For the first time, I remember approaching Bishop Manny, and normally I just did whatever they asked me to do. And this time I said, I really have this desire, and I don't know where it comes from, because I'm comfortable, everything's going great here. I'm not sure why, it doesn't make any sense, but I feel this desire, this passion to go to the mission. Bishop Manny became quite sick. I was chaplain at the hospital where he was at. So he died. I guess he had told the diocesan administrator, Len Morand at that time, that I was to go to Brazil.
I grew up in a large family, and so I had a lot of brothers and sisters. And then I entered the convent, and I found that very good because there were more people. And I made a comment to my family, I left a big family for a bigger one. And when the whole aspect of going to Brazil came, of course, it was bigger yet. So it's always, I guess I have a bit of my father's adventure. He always wanted to be a vagabond and go through the world, but he had 16 children, so he never really realized that.
I guess God had his plans right from the start, because for one thing, my parents were very mission-minded. I know that when we prayed that family rosary, the missions were always included, and we were poor, but my dad always, I remember him sending a contribution to the missions. And I suppose that was in my blood somehow. And when the Saskatoon guys went to Uniao, they had a radio program. Bob Ogle had this radio program every Sunday, and I never missed it. But I remember him saying that it just changes your life. And that too grew on me. And I was teaching in Munster, and our superior came for a visit, an official visit. And I thought to myself, well, I'm going to try one more time and see what she says. Well, I didn't even have a chance to open my mouth, and she asked me, are you still interested in going to Brazil? Of course I am. So then in January of '73, I was sent to proclaim the good news, to have the good news proclaimed to me too. You know, it's such a reciprocal thing, isn't it? Yeah.
The lushness of the vegetation, honest to God, eh? We had coconut trees and mango trees, and name them. We had them all.
A great variety of fruit and trees, and just a great variety.
I thought it was beautiful. I was very happy to see that Laje was in a city surrounded by hills, because I had just spent about 10 years in Merritt, BC, where Merritt is the same thing, you know, surrounded by hills, except the hills are not as green as here. But so it was wonderful to come here. It reminded me a little bit of, you know, that scenery that I had loved in BC.
I guess, you know, people always say that the Brazilian people are very welcoming and warm.
Yeah, the welcome of the people, you know.
And then the warmth of the people.
You just felt the warmth, the welcome.
The eyes of the little children, the little black eyes and the little excitement in their faces, that was very impressive for me, and it warmed my heart from the beginning.
Joy, happiness, they were happy with so little.
But we also saw life is very difficult.
That was overwhelming was flying over Rio and see, how do we say, favela, just on the outskirts of the airport. That was quite a shocking reality for kind of that first impression of, you know, getting to Brazil.
We had this hospital for the poor. In those days, people would stay in that hospital for months on end. Oh, my first impact to see how emaciated they were and the conditions of the hospital, you know. Oh, it was just overwhelming.
I would say that my first reaction was, this is paradise, but the serpent got into it. So it really was physically, you know, a planet of gorgeous life, fruits of all kinds, plants. They just, you couldn't stop them. And yet, people were deprived. It made no sense to me. And when you began to see the economic situation, you could see why, that there was, it was typical of our greedy world, where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer.
I saw a depth of poverty, and I'm going to say of oppression there. However, I also saw the resilience of the people and their strength, their determination of faith and of wanting to make a life better for their family, their children, and their community.
Both the Saskatoon Diocese and St. Peter's Abbey missions were settled in the Brazilian state of Alagoas in the communities of União dos Palmares, Maceió, Marechal Deodoro, São José de Laje, and Ibataguara. The two mission teams became one when the abbacy and the diocese amalgamated in 1998. Throughout the history of the mission, the missionaries worked with the people on many high-profile projects. Land reform initiatives were one priority. Working with the landless farmers to help them have a place to live and farm with dignity remains an ongoing struggle. Thousands were left homeless by the numerous floods that plagued the region. Helping to find high ground and organize the building of homes was another very visible way that they were able to live the gospel. The major work of the mission, however, was in the countless small ways that the missionaries lived, worked, played, and prayed along with the people.
The parish that we were given, União dos Palmares, was about half the size of the Diocese of Saskatoon. And the Brazilian bishop said, rather than do everything from one church and a few chapels, try to form small Christian communities.
75 of them. They had 75 groups going.
And train people to be the church in those communities.
Todas as comunidades rurais, aquelas comunidades que foram iniciadas com vocês, canadenses, né? Lá nos confins onde a gente nem imaginava que existia uma comunidade, o senhor descobriu grupo lá e formou uma comunidade.
He'd go, you know, miles and rough roads to have a meeting with the catechists and then celebrate Mass.
Então nós temos essas várias comunidades na zona rural, onde de fato a gente continua se reunindo, eles continuam fazendo um trabalho de evangelização com o povo lá.
That's a story I like to tell. This one gentleman called José Rocha became a very good leader. And he, you know, he'd come to me with problems like the youth don't want to participate and the people are making fun of him when he walks by. They say, there goes the padre. But I would encourage him and keep on going, keep on working at it and things. Well, about 15 or 20 years later, The community is well established. There's probably 60 or 70 youth in the youth group. And when I celebrated the Mass, the seventh-day Mass of his death, people were saying, we will miss our priest. He had become the spiritual leader of the community and really was tremendous.
E eu não falei ainda com o trabalho de Padre Roberto, que ele fez em Barra do Canhoto, né? Lá na Barra, né? Que ele construiu aquela vila de João Paulo II, né? Sim, tem o nome? Isso. A construção, ele era de dentro, com aquele chapéu na cabeça, contando as pedras, ele contava até as pedras, o cimento que era, porque o senhor sabe que, infelizmente, em todo lugar existe gente que gosta de se aproveitar. Não, os padres têm muito, vamos tirar. Ele não admitia isso. E hoje ainda existe essa vila, lá em Barra do Canhoto, com o nome, que devia ter o nome dele, Padre Roberto, mas tem o nome que ele consagrou, não é?
Emil gave leadership, I think, to the formation of catechists. Crucial, in a vast parish like that.
O senhor disse, Teresa, tem uma turma de criança aqui nessa área. Se precisar de uma catequista, você poderia nos ajudar? Eu disse, sim, padre. E a partir daí eu comecei na catequese. Então, o meu engajamento realmente na comunidade, na igreja, foi a partir daí. Porque até então eu ia à missa, mas eu não tinha participação nenhuma.
We started the RCIA down there. Most of the people were baptized, but they had never been confirmed, and they didn't have much of a church experience. So we devised a system where we had, I think, 120 or 130 candidates or catechumens, and we would break them down into groups, and every Sunday afternoon they would meet. And it was kind of a huge success, the Easter Vigil being the highlight, and see people entering this great big tub of water, and everybody else, crying. It was very emotional. And then I still remember the people after the celebration all kind of trying to bathe themselves with the water from the baptismal font.
I remember a Mass with Father Les in one of the big farms that was broken up halfway through because there was a dogfight in the middle of the communion. Another one in the main church that we had to put a fire out because the candles overflowed. And my favorite was a Mass in the wrong side of the tracks, maybe really literally, in União, where halfway through Mass, everyone was approaching for communion and then they started to back up. It was because the train was actually coming through this outdoor Mass, and then it stopped right in the middle and people had to climb over the box carts to get to communion.
In 1970, Father Don McGilvery co-founded Mering, a place of refuge for children in need. It remains active to this day, along with nearby Rainha da Paz, a program for orphaned and at-risk girls.
He was one of the primary movers in creating a creche, they called it. It's a refuge for orphaned or young children.
Agora estamos atendendo criança vítima de maus tratos, porque as crianças estavam sofrendo muito em casa, ou fizeram um diagnóstico na cidade.
Dá um sorriso, um sorriso.
Father Bob Ugo did a tremendous amount to get the parish started. Father Don McGilvery was instrumental in getting the people encouraged, happy to be part of the parish. Father Bernard Stauber helped us a lot in the community area. He would celebrate Mass in every little community. And Sister Leah, and she worked mainly in the country communities and really did a lot of training of lay people. She did a very good job on that. Father Les Paquin came rather towards the end, and he was very good at organizing. So basically, we each had our role in the different. We were very different, but people look back and they say we were complementary. Father Bob did one thing, Father Don did another. I did one thing, Father Bernard Stauber did another.
Se pensam como eu estou pensando, quando eu vejo os trabalhos do Papa Francisco, eu me lembro muito dos canadenses aqui em Montes Palmares, porque eles eram com uma missão importantíssima. Eles não ficavam só dentro da igreja a celebrar.
Podemos dizer, nós fomos privilegiados e continuamos sendo privilegiados por conta do trabalho que vocês fizeram aqui na nossa paróquia.
Para mim, a memória mais forte foi levar a alegria e levar também a vida daqueles que viviam nos barracos, né? E transformar o bairro, a comunidade.
Around this time was the question of the street girls. We have a religious association, and they put out the challenge, what are we doing socially as a group? And we found out that there were various projects with the street boys, but there was nothing for women, nothing for the street girls. And so as a group, after a year, we decided to start a sort of a volunteer program for the street girls, that they would be, first of all, meet them on the streets and have a place that they could come to get some help or get a wash up or whatever. It wasn't so much to talking with them or educating them, but of giving them an embrace, playing a few games with them, giving them the affection that I was talking about.
You know, like they got no orientation from their mothers, and most of these girls were daughters of these laundry ladies.
O que mais forte para mim foi a religiosidade, né? Hoje, praticamente, eu tenho a minha vida religiosa, minha mãe praticamente, mas eu considero Irmã Cléia, Tempo, aquele grupo, como uma segunda mãe para mim, né?
And we did all kinds of interesting things with them. We had drama, music, besides always some kind of human formation.
E assim, uma vulnerabilidade muito grande que nosso bairro vivia, né? E no momento que vocês chegaram, vocês foram a porta de entrada.
Walk out on the beach in moonlight nights, and that's where Eliane said, you know, her eyes were opened to nature, which she had never realized before.
Sexualidade, valorizava a vida em relação ao mar, olhar para as estrelas, que isso eu não tinha da minha mãe, né?
Como o Tim pôde ver também nesse trabalho que está fazendo de filmagem, em todo canto que as irmãs chegam, e assim também era quando a equipe canadense estava completa, a gente tinha a presença de famílias, ou seja, a presença da equipe era como uma família para a gente, e as famílias da gente se tornavam a família da equipe, brasileiras, alagoana e canadense.
De orientação. Se hoje eu sou o que eu sou, eu agradeço à equipe canadense, né?
The move from Maceió to Marechal Deodoro opened up new opportunities for the people of this interior district. With the arrival of Father Sylvester, Sister Louise, and Sister Claire, the faithful of the parish now had the chance for regular Eucharistic celebrations. Through biblical, liturgical, catechetical, and human formation, they were better able to take up their faith in their daily lives. 2 years before the sisters planned to leave for home, a team of 4 Carmelite priests arrived to minister to the very active and faith-filled parishes of the area. The Farm of Hope is a place for men to free themselves from drug and alcohol dependency and to restart their lives. Sister Claire's weekly visits helped to reinforce this faith-based Catholic program.
The founder said, you don't come here to get out of drugs. You come here to the farm to learn to love. And once you learn to love in the proper sense of the word, drugs fall by the wayside. And it is so true, because in the farm they have a lot of opportunity to ask pardon, to be pardoned, and to share. Many of them come from the street, some come from very good families. Maybe they're an only child and they never had any kind of community living before. The tripod for the recuperation consists of community living, work, and spirituality. These three things. There are no medicines involved. They work in the fields, they work in the house, they do the cooking, they do the washing. Here they do everything. They have a night a week when they share how they try to live the word in a practical way. Then another night they can express their thoughts about how they are feeling about being there. That is the medicine that they use.
Sister Janine Rondeau, a member of the Sisters of Mission Service, arrived in São José de Laje in 1992. She was joined 3 years later by Sister Marie Noel, an SMS sister who is also her sister by birth. Originally from France, the women first made Canada their new home before becoming missionaries in Brazil. The two of them worked side by side with the people of this valley city until returning to Saskatoon in July 2014. Their ministry of presence has been a living gospel to the people they have served for 22 years.
We went to the Alto da Cocada later on, which was also a very special need because nobody was going there, and we felt it was essential to include people there.
I think maybe 14 years ago we started going up there. I'm saying forgotten by the city just to give you an idea. You know, you see the condition to go up and down. It's just those little paths in between the houses. Can you believe that it was only 1 year ago that the people up there have water? All these years, it was the only area of the city where people did not even have water. So the water would get there maybe twice a day, early in the morning and at night. So what would happen? The people would line up their buckets, hoping they could get water. This is the way it has been for years. And a year ago, finally, the city has looked into, and they have water. There are people who I'm saying they've been forgotten.
Because I think for the people down here, they're the no-good people. They're the people that are forever in trouble. They didn't work. They were really, I don't know the word. They were really on the sideline. And it was also the idea of going there. There's no road. It was not simple to go there, especially in the rainy season. But it was a people that was almost disowned. And why, I don't know. I think the people down here felt they were not, it's a hard thing to say, but that they were almost not worth it.
So we were going up there, Janine was going, there was a time, and three other lay people. We used to go there and spend afternoons. Wonderful. You sit with the people, you listen to their story. We used to go and evangelize there. We used to go and do some things with the kids, you know. Many people down here have never gone up there. There's that attitude that it's the people out there are bad people. For the last few years, I would say not very long, maybe the last couple of years. Now the worst part is not only the people have, you know, there are people who suffer an awful lot, who are forgotten, but now they live in fear. Gangs, I'm saying gangs from outside are hiding up there. So anyway, we kept on going, even though we knew that, we kept on going. Except that with time, I felt some of the lay people who were with us became very uneasy. And the people up there kept saying to us, you know, they kept saying to us that they would likely do nothing to us, that they would probably not interfere. But it just came to the point where we just had to leave. the police came and you know, said, look, really, you shouldn't go up there. That was sad because we had the sense of abandoning the people. They understood very well why we didn't keep on going. But, we have come to know and love those people, and now we feel it's hard for us to go up there.
Eu comecei a trabalhar, eu comecei a me relacionar com as irmãs num trabalho que nós desenvolvíamos na cocada, com os mais pobres, dos mais pobres da cidade, com as crianças, com os esquecidos, onde ninguém queria ir. As irmãs chegaram aqui em São José da Laje e começaram a ir. E nessa experiência, muitos foram participando, e eu fui um dos que fui participar, e aprendi a considerar esses, os mais simples, na minha vida, dar importância aos mais simples. E foi aí que eu comecei a trabalhar com os coroinhas, com os jovens, que aqui na paróquia eram aqueles mais simples, os mais esquecidos. Então essa foi a experiência mais pessoal, mais profunda que eu tive com as irmãs, foi de buscar Jesus nos outros, né? Um novo jeito de ser igreja, um novo jeito de ver o mundo, um novo jeito de ver as coisas.
After a 4-year absence, Father Les Paquin was able to return to the country where his heart was. He was sent to Ibataguara, a city high in the mountains at the western edge of the Archdiocese. He was tasked with nothing less than starting a new parish from the ground up. Unfortunately, health issues dictated his return to Canada after just 2 years. What he and the parish were able to achieve in such a short time continues to bear fruit today, and promises to do so for generations to come.
I still remember the first time I celebrated Mass there. I just had my alb on and I was greeting people at the door.
Dia de chuva, estava fazendo muito frio.
I celebrated Mass and I was a little bit rusty on my Portuguese because I'd been away for 4 years. And they were kind of intrigued, you could see the curiosity and everything else. And at the end of Mass, I said to them, if you would like me to be your pastor, then I would stay. And I said, if you don't want me, that's fine too, I will go back.
Foi uma alegria muito grande para nós, foi uma surpresa também, porque em muito pouco tempo ele veio conhecer e depois ele veio tomar posse. Foi uma surpresa.
Well, of course, they were all excited, and from there the parish would be born.
Estava acontecendo 2 momentos, o de criação da paróquia e de padre que nós não tínhamos.
And to see this parish starting to take life, not because, again, Les was doing everything for them, but was calling forth their gifts and talents, speaking about justice, and just serving the parishioners.
I could imagine how the missionaries started in 1964 because it was very, very primitive and it was much more violent. It was used often as a hideaway for criminals who were trying to escape. I would go celebrate Mass in one of the favelas or the slums, and often there were gunshots not too far away from where we were celebrating Mass.
Caminhadas, a gente fazia algumas caminhadas, ele gostava muito de fazer caminhadas e eu caminhava já durante a manhã, 5 horas da manhã eu já fazia caminhadas. E o relacionamento da gente era esse, só igreja, caminhadas, e eu percebia algumas vezes que ele estava com dificuldades, que achava o desafio da paróquia, que não foi fácil.
Those involved in church, they kind of catered to the rich. And when I came, we did away with all that. We just said, no, everybody's going to be treated equally. There's a baptism, this Saturday at 9 o'clock in the morning. All those interested should appear. Getting to the country communities, impossible in the winter because of the rains, but in the summer we would get out as much as we could, but it was basically starting from zero. So we were in the process of building up a parish and building it up from the ground level and having the people involved in the building of the parish. There was really nothing in place. So it was lots of fun and trying to get things started.
And it was a hope that that would continue to be a long-term involvement in that town, parish. However, Les's health did not allow that.
You know, the poorest of the poor, the humblest of the poor, seeing them with some dignity and seeing them starting to do things and take ownership of the church, that was truly exciting.
Esses seus cabelos brancos, bonito esse olhar cansado, profundo.
Well, Don, by the time I got there in 77, had been there 13 years. So by that time he was already starting to be the patriarch of the parish.
Padre Donaldo, esse não se fala, foi o paizão.
Father Don McGilvery was more the pastor. He was more the person, and he is known throughout the diocese as the most welcoming person in the diocese.
E assim, Donaldo está fazendo demais, mas não era. Com 15 dias ele não tinha mais nada, porque ele já tinha dado tudo.
Don found himself in Brazil. Oh, that was a God-given to him, I think, because he loved Brazil, he loved the Brazilians.
And no matter what was going on, he would find some word of encouragement and really did a tremendous job visiting the sick and being there for people who had difficulties, going to the jail to visit somebody.
A model of merciful love and unending patience in exercising his pastoral charity.
Father Sylvester is one wonderful gift that we gave to Brazil.
He was here. It was a Saturday afternoon.
And for some reason or other, there was a young catechist or a young girl there.
She asked him, does it pay to be a Christian 50% of the time or something, some question like that? You know, what a question. Oh, he said, half a Christian. He said, what, from here up or from here down? He had a real sense of humor. He said, I'm going to write out the answer. And he sat down and he wrote out a thing. It's beautiful. And so he read it. I was there and a couple of others were there and these girls. Oh yeah, we said, that's fine. So, okay, and he signed it.
And it was an amazing, beautiful summary, just the last afternoon of his life, of his faith as a Christian.
Well, that was something so out of this world because he never wrote anything down that, you know, like, I mean, a question like that, what he did. And then he left. And about 10 minutes later, a lady came to the door and she said, it seems that Father Sylvester was in an accident.
It was a big fuel tanker, a semi, that hit his little motorcycle. And to me, that was the final gift of a Sylvester who was given. And he chose to go to Brazil. He chose to give everything he could for the poor.
When he saw a need, he wanted to respond to that need, and I think that's probably what endeared him to the people there. So now there's all kinds of buildings named after him. There's a cemetery named after him, and he's very fondly remembered.
I don't think that when he died and everybody was in such mourning, it was exaggerated. I think they just loved him because he was such a good man.
He was taken to Marechal, and there again, the church was super packed, super packed. And they had a mass there too. And then, like for big shots, they always put the coffin on top of a fire truck. Well, somebody had provided one of those trucks, and they put him on top of that. And then he was taken back to be buried in Maceió. And what was so touching too, when we came down the highway, like these communities, many people didn't have cars yet at that time. And at the road side, every community, there were loads of people watching, you know, and we got to Maceió. Well, there were thousands, because he was known all over the city, you know. He had friends in every area of work in the city, you know, everybody knew him. So that was really a very touching period in our history, you know, yeah. It was beautiful, yeah.
I feel for me, maybe the greatest privilege, I don't know if I'm answering the question here, but it's been to journey with the poor. Oh, the poor is everywhere. But I'm thinking in Canada, I knew the poor from further away. And here we knew the poor, we got to know the poor day in, day out. And so that has been a great privilege.
A wider appreciation of the church as an outreach to the poor.
Well, I think what's going to be most precious is the simplicity and the friendliness of the people. They will remain with us, you know. We're leaving them, but we're taking them with us too.
And this was the hardest thing for Father Don McGilvery, is that every day there were 15, 20 people sitting on our front porch waiting to talk to us about their problem and how they needed help. And of course you couldn't help everybody, and that was really tough, you know. If you said yes and you'd helped one person, then he'd go and tell everybody else that you helped him. A little bit like Jesus would say, don't tell anybody.
I learned the true meaning of hope. When you have nothing and you're willing to risk your lives to give your children a better life, not thinking of yourselves, then that is hope.
When I went there, I was tended to be rigid on many things. I tended to think that this is the way we should do it and all this. Now I've come back and you know, I see much more value in encouraging people to be church and to think, and then supporting what they come up with. That is very useful around here too, because some people have all kinds of wonderful ideas, and with a little bit of support, away they go.
To even in their struggles, their difficulties, that they showed me that they still believe so much in a God of goodness, and still believing that in spite of everything, the life will be better yet. You know, they didn't lose hope.
When I first came to the diocese, I was struck by how many of the people in the diocese have a deep sense of justice and a strong sense of connection with the church outside of Saskatoon and outside of Canada. I think the Brazil mission has helped to form that broader vision in people, has helped to awaken in them a sense of concern and even a preoccupation with how the church is doing in Brazil, how it's doing elsewhere.
I think it has kept awake and alert the sense of that the church is bigger than our diocese, and that we exist as a healthy church when we share ourselves with others.
And perhaps in Saskatoon, yes, we send money and you know, other helps, but we especially learn what it means to be a church that cares for the poor.
A visit to the early mission moved Al Gerwing to work directly with the marginalized and oppressed of Brazil for 30 years. Shortly before his death in 2007, he wrote, "I am so grateful that time, history, and destiny placed the dear Brazilians in my path, for they greatly enriched my last years of my life." Many Brazilians would say the same of him.
Well, I think it has opened, certainly it's over their pocketbooks, but because of that, it must have opened their hearts to the needs of a wider area than just of their own families or their own diocese.
People here gained a lot of insights and knowledge about situations in third world countries because of that.
you know, to be able to see a joy in the midst of suffering. Just that in itself, I think, that's, if I can take that to Saskatoon, the joy in the midst of suffering, of the daily struggle, then that's taking an awful lot home with me.
I think it's made them more conscious that there are places in the world that need our interest, our support, our prayer. We become a family.
It's made us, you know, not turn in on ourselves, but kept us looking outwards. And I would always go back to the expression that we need the mission more than the mission needs us.
It did a lot for making mission as an essential part of our being Catholic, being Christian.
Basically, or one of the most important things is awareness of some of the real life situations.
Maybe it'll help us to be more aware of the poverty in our own community. Maybe we can't all go to Brazil, but we can see that there are needs in our own community.
So there's no question my further steps in advocacy and medicine, everything that I've done has been deeply informed by the experience that I had in India.
And maybe it prepared us for being a mission country ourselves in some way, where we have to bring offshore priests to Saskatoon and to our country.
And now it has to remind us, you know, when we have a hard time, to be patient with foreign accents here. If they only knew how people were patient down there with our foreign accents. We should think a bit more about that. The generosity of the missionaries who come. They're in a strange country, as we were in a strange country there. So make them welcome and help them to do their ministry.
I have that feeling that we were preparing for this exchange, long-term exchange, where we gave and then we received. Maybe we'll give again, I hope.
If nothing else, it taught us some balance and some perspective, and certainly our own need for the poor, preferential option of the poor, meaning if you don't walk with the poor, you're going to lose your own soul.
And so now it comes to an end, but I think the fruit is going to continue for many, many, many years to come.
I share with many an enormous gratitude for what the missionaries have done, those who have served in Brazil for a number of months, years, even decades. We are very indebted to them. We are so grateful for what they've done on behalf of all of us.
Muito obrigado à congregação das irmãs, aos padres que desenvolveram um trabalho nos Palmares e ao povo, à população, à comunidade de Saskatoon. Eu gostaria de dizer que eles são uma igreja abençoada por ter pessoas que são referenciais, autênticas de Jesus no meio do povo, no meio das pessoas. Saskatoon é uma igreja abençoada.
I just want to thank, first of all, God, Bishop Klein, Abbot Jerome, and Pope John XXIII, first of all, for making that invitation, and that the two bishops responded, to that request and really assumed the mission here, because it has been such an enriching thing, not just for me personally, but I know for a lot of people, everybody that was involved, I think.
Somos a sua semente, ficamos muito tristes, apesar a gente não pode incomodar, né? Se pudesse permaneciam aqui, infelizmente, né? Deixou muitos filhos e netos, né? Eu mesmo assim, quando meus filhos são pequenininhos, quero ir para cada avó.
I would love to give kudos to especially the ones that have returned home, sort of with mixed feelings, and ending the mission with, I think, some real pain, because they loved it there and they loved those people so much.
Thank you, God. Thank you, and thank you to the people of Brazil. And thank you to the people of Canada that made this possible, this experience.
Só agradecer, só agradecimento mesmo. A Deus principalmente por ter trazido elas para nós.
I'm very grateful to God first, because, you know, that has to be the first call when I think of. I'm very grateful because I feel God has been so good, so faithful. It's faith. I have to say this much. That was faith, because it cannot be anything else.
Cuide bem dessas duas irmãs, que pra gente é um tesouro, mas a gente tá triste com a partida delas, mas muito feliz, porque Deus mandou elas vir aqui para o Brasil, elas cumpriram a missão e agora tá voltando.
Foi muito importante na minha vida, aquela força, naquela hora de dor, mas também nos momentos de alegrias da comunidade, a irmã Cléia estava lá presente, né? Isso é que é bom, é que fica. E a gente pede com muito carinho e com muito amor que vocês cuidem, mas cuidem bem mesmo da irmã Cléia e da irmã Luísa.
The seeds growing so much. What they put in this land, now it's growing and growing so much.
We do have to say that the Diocese of Saskatoon has been generous and good in supporting us, in journeying with us. We felt really lovingly supported and accompanied by the people of Saskatoon.
I would end my version of the story by thanking people of Saskatoon. They have been tremendous, starting with Bishop Mahoney, the priests that invited us into their parishes when we would come back, the sisters with their support, and the people who would ask all kinds of questions and would be very generous in the collection that we had every year. So I think that would be the final word, would be just a big thank you, that a lot of the things that we were able to do in Brazil was the people of Saskatoon.